program demonstrate about, you can see here, I have created a class, I have created an object, right? I have created an object here for that class. For creation of object, I told you, you have to follow the syntax here, the class name, object name, that variable name, equal to new. This is the special method will be called. That method we call it as, that method, the special method, we call it as
Constructor.
constructor. Yeah, we will now try to understand some more details about the constructors. So this Java program demonstrates about constructors. We can see here, I told you, if you follow the syntax, a special method will be called, right? A special method will be called. That method name is exactly equal to class name. But if you see, I didn't define that method. You can see here, I called rect area method because I have already defined rect area in the rectangle class, because I have already defined. So I called the rect area. I defined get data. I called get data method using object. But if you see here, the rectangle method, rectangle is again itself is a method. This is a special method will be called. That method name is exactly equal to class name. In fact, I didn't define that method. It is automatically defining by the Java compiler. When you create an object, when the Java compiler compiles this statement, automatically it defines a default constructor. Rather, you may ask, can we define rather than default constructor, rather than if because I didn't create any constructor here. That's why Java compiler itself creates creates a constructor, and the compiler the Java engine calls that constructor. Rather, the Java allows you to create the own constructors. We will see now today how we can create our customized constructors. We will see now. We using the example. To understand the example, I want to take the same class rather than square all those things. I want to take only this class alone, class rectangle. I will just copy up to the properties, Yeah. Now leave about the polygon area. Think about now. Now this Java file contains only now one class rectangle. It contains two members, data members, two data members. I am defining one more class. This is in fact the demo constructor demo. I want to give some meaningful name, constructor demo. Then class name is your choice as per the project requirement, but you always try to give a meaningful names. Now I want to define the main method here, public static void main. It will take only one argument, that is array of strings, main method. Yeah, because now if you see, observe now the Java file, it contains two methods, rectangle, it contains two classes, rectangle, constructor demo. I follow the conventions, R capital, C capital. Every other word, if the class name contains more than one word, each word should be capitalized. That is the convention to increase the readability. Now constructor demo. Now because now this class contains main method as per the previous as per in the previous program, as I told you, you make it as public, save this Java file as which name we have to give?
Constructor demo.
Constructor demo. structor constructor demo. Yeah, as of now constructor demo.java. See here, I want to create an object. For rectangle. This idea is I am focusing to explain the constructor. That's why I don't want to go for all the methods. This goal is different. My goal here is I want to demonstrate. I want to show the demonstration to make you understand about the constructors. Assume now it doesn't contain any other methods as we have defined here. I want to create object now. You already know the syntax. This is object creation. The class name, rectangle, the object name, assume rect, a new rectangle. Yeah, this is the object creation, right? See here, as I told you, a new method will be called, that is constructor, because I didn't define here. I didn't define any constructor for the class rectangle. The Java compiler already creates the default constructor. Rather, we can also define our own constructor as per our requirement. That is the now this program demonstrated. And now I want to create the constructor for the class. I don't. If you don't create, Java compiler will create. If we create, Java compiler won't create. Whatever the method you define here, that method will be called. Remember, the constructor is a special method that will be called automatically. Try to understand my words. Constructor is a special method that will be called automatically when you create an object. When you write this statement, if any constructor is there, if you define any constructor, that will be called automatically, but that is not the context of the other method. See now, get data is a method. If you call with the object, then only this get data method will be called. Again, the print data is method for the rectangle in the previous example. When it will be called, if you have to call as a programmer, if you call, then only the print data method will be called. Similarly, rect area is a method, but that is not the case of the constructor. Constructor will be called automatically. That is the difference between these methods. Whatever these are also members, right? Whatever we have seen these methods versus the constructor. I hope the point is clear, right? Constructor will be called automatically. These methods won't be called automatically. If you call, then only those methods will be called. That is the first difference. I want to write here. I want to write here in the comment. So the constructor, if you create an object, remember again, constructor will be called when you create an object. If you don't write this statement, then it won't be, constructor won't be called. That you have to remember. Constructor is a special method. Constructor is a special method that is called automatically. You may not write again a statement like object name dot that constructor name. You may not write that statement. It will be called automatically when you create an object. That you have to remember. That is the property of that special method. We call it as constructor. We will see now. I want to define a constructor for the rectangle class. If you want to define a constructor for the rectangle class, it takes the same syntax, whatever you can see the here method different method definition. It takes the same syntax, but again, one more thing you have to remember. It takes the same syntax, except the constructor method doesn't contain any return type. You have to remember this again. I am again repeating my words. If you want to define the constructor, it is also a method for the rectangle class. The difference between these methods and constructor is, I have already shown one point I told you here. It will be called automatically, but while defining, you have to remember it takes the same syntax, except the constructor doesn't contain any return type. That is the first point. Constructor, I will write here. Try to remember these points. Constructor definition. I am defining now constructor for the rectangle. The first scenario, if you want to define the constructor for any class, it doesn't contain return type. You don't give it return type. Similarly, one more thing you have to remember, constructor name should be equal to the class name. It is the constructor name, it is nothing but the class name. As we have already, I already told you this point, right? Should be equal to the class name. We will see now. If you remember these points about constructor, you will see now the coming to the constructor definition. As per these rules, I want to now define the constructor. Follow the same syntax, public, return type void, right? But you don't use return type for the constructor. That is the rule. It doesn't contain any return type. So no return type. The constructor name should be class name. Should be class name. Try to understand. I hope I understood it. This is a constructor. Is it clear as of now? Can I continue? Remember 3 points here. The constructor will be called automatically. See, this rectangle is a constructor. We define now. It will be called automatically. Again, you may not again rect dot rectangle. You may not again. You may not call again specifically. It will be called automatically when you write this object creation statement. While defining the constructor for any class, you have to remember few points. That point is, it doesn't contain any return type. Suppose assume if you define it is return type, Java compiler doesn't treat it as a compiler, doesn't treat it as a constructor. So if you again define like this, now Java compiler treats it as a method like these methods. I hope the point is clear. If you follow the rules, now this is a constructor. I hope the point is understood. If I execute, then you can understand, you will get confidence. See now, as per it doesn't contain return type, no return type now. This name should be equal to the class name. Now our class name is rectangle. This name is equal to the class name. Yeah. For simplicity, now this is my this is our own constructor. I want to just print a message here. System dot out dot println. See, as I told you, it will be called automatically when you create an object for this class, right? If you call this, if you write this statement, it will be called automatically. That is the point here. We will see now. I want to write, I want to print some message, and the object has been our rectangle object has been created. Again, go through this Java program. Class rectangle, it contains two properties, and also I define the constructor. This is a constructor for this class. Now the class definition end. This is above rectangle class. We also have one more class here, constructor demo. It contains the main method. Since the constructor demo contains the main method, I saved it as the Java file as constructor demo.java. You can see this is object creation. You already know. See, suppose assume other than constructor, assume it contains one more method, assume like public get data something, public get data something. When this get data will be called, if you want to call this method, you have to call manually, right? You have to write in the program rect.get data. Then only this get data method will be called. But you can see here, this is a constructor. Even you may not call again rect.rectangle. It will be called automatically. We will see now. I will save it. I will save it. Clear the screen. This is constructor demo. Can anyone guess now? As per my explanation, what is the output of this Java program? If I execute as per my explanation,
rectangle object has been created.
Has been created, right? Yeah, yes, you are right. You will see now. Java C constructor demo.java. Yeah, it has been compiled successfully. Java a constructor demo. You can see rectangle object has been created. Even I didn't call this constructor, it will be automatically called by called. That is the remembering point. You have to remember it. As I told you, suppose assume I define something, assume return type something. I didn't follow that rules, right? Constructor rules. You will see now. But mistakenly, while defining the constructor, normally we follow the syntax like this, right? The access specifier public space, the return type space method name. This is the syntax we follow for the normal methods. Mistakenly you define like this. We will see what will happen. I will save. I will save. Recompile. Execute. See, that method is not created automatically. You can understand it. Now the Java engine or Java compiler treat it as a normal method. Whatever we have seen in the previous example, it is treating it as a normal method. I hope the point is clear. This is the constructor. Previous one is not a constructor. Remember, you have to follow these rules. Again, recall the rules. It doesn't contain return type. The name should be equal to the class name. It will be called automatically. These 3 points you have to remember. This is about the constructor. But if you see now, we will now extend this constructor concept. See, can we pass parameters to the constructor? You can see here, the get data is a method that is taking parameters. If you see, if you think about the methods, you already know, as per our requirement, the method may take parameters, I mean arguments or parameters, or may not take the argument parameters, right? Now the again question arises here. Constructor is also a method, but it is a special method. Whether constructor can take arguments or not. If it takes arguments, what will happen? How that will be executed. Now I will continue now the discussion. If you see now this constructor, it doesn't take any parameters. That time we call this constructor as default constructor. Default constructor. Assume you don't create any constructor for the class. Compiler will automatically create constructor. It automatically generate the default constructor without any message. You hope you understood. If you define the constructor, compiler won't create whatever the constructor definition, the statements will be executed automatically when you create an object. That you have to remember. One more point here. In fact, in Java, there are two types of constructors. Again, remember here in Java, there are two types of constructors. The first type of constructor, what we have seen here, is default constructor. Means the properties, it doesn't take any parameters. It doesn't take any parameters. Then we call it as default constructor. The second constructor, we call it as the name suggests, parameterized constructor. As the name suggests, it takes parameters. That is only the difference. It takes the argument or parameter, both are same only in the programming terminology, right? In the programming jargon, we usually use parameter and argument as synonyms. So in Java, there are two types of constructors. One is default constructor, another one is parameterized constructor. We will now try to understand the parameterized constructor case, when this parameterized constructor will be helpful. To understand this, think about whether it is a C programming or Java. While creating a variable for the primitive data types, assume int is a primitive data type, right? Suppose assume I want to create a variable for the primitive data type, that is int is a primitive data type in Java and in C also, right? Now int num is a variable for the primitive data type. Similarly, assume I have created a class rectangle. As I told you in the previous classes, the class or the class definition or the class itself acts as a user defined data type. You can create the class variable. We call it as object. We have seen here. Now think about this scenario, rectangle. This is now the class name, rectangle. I have created rect1, rectangle 1. Normally we can, if you leave like this, memory won't be allotted. If memory should be allotted, if you call the special method, that is the scenario here, right? Now this is the class variable. This is the primitive data type related variable. Try to compare these two. This is primitive data type scenario. This is class scenario. This is a primitive data type scenario. This is the class related variables. Class itself acts as a user defined data type. Try to understand this point. Try to remember this point. This is class variables, right? Class related variables. Class itself acts as a user defined data type. Class data type related variables. This is okay. You can yeah, I missed it here. So now for the num, a memory location is allocated to store one integer number. Similarly, For this statement, Java statement, memory location is allocated to store the rectangle related data. But now see, in the primitive data type, this is one case. In the primitive data type, can we assign values? Can we assign values or can we initialize values at the time of declaration? Is it true?
Yes, sir.
It is true, right? We can initialize them or we can assign the values at the time of declaration. Now the same question arises. In the primitive scenario, we can assign or we can initialize the variables at the time of declaration, but how we can assign, try to understand, I am just relating it to the primitive data type, how we can assign the value at the time of how we can assign the values for the object at the time of declaration. This is the object creation or declaration. You can compare this one with this statement, comparing with the primitive data type. You can see here in the primitive data type, second case, we can initialize them at the time of declaration. How is it possible in the case of class? How we can modify it? This time, the answer is it is possible. It is possible by using parameterized constructor. I hope the point is clear. Why the parameterized constructor will helpful? The parameterized constructor will be helpful to initialize the values for the object at the time of creation itself. I hope the point is clear, right? Are you understanding my point? Okay, I am again repeating now the 1240. So try to understand now the summary of the today's session. We have already seen a Java file contains more than one class. If the Java file contains more than one class, at the time you have to follow the convention. You have to save that Java file. That name should be equal to the class which contains the main method. That is the first summary point one. The summary point two, we have in Java, we have two types of constructors. The first one is default constructor. We have already seen with this small program. If you want to define a new constructor for any class, you have to remember few points. That is, constructor doesn't contain any return type. Constructor name should be equal to the class name. One more point, it will be called automatically when you create an object. The last point, we have two types of constructor. Default constructor means it doesn't take any parameter. The parameterized constructor, it will take parameters. This parameterized constructor will be helpful to assign or to initialize the object at the time of creation itself. By comparing with the primitive data types, you can understand these two cases. This is case one. Case one we have already seen. Case two you have to understand. The case two is possible using the parameterized constructor. We will discuss the parameterized constructor in the next class. This is the summary. Yeah, is there any doubt? Is it okay, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I have already shared